Hey, what's up, fam? It's me again, your king. I am Legacy. Welcome to part 2 of the 7-part series. In this video, I will be talking about communicating with compassion, right? So, I'm always ask you this question. Oh, come on, man. That marker don't work. Aha. This one does. Here we go.
Wait, hold on. Start over.
Why?
That was good.
Let's let it keep going. Don't start it over. Let it keep going.
Keep going there. Keep going.
Yeah. What is... I'm giving... Come on, man.
No, this is perfect.
Everybody, that's Khalil. That's my director. Tried to stop me. What is compassion? Right? I was never taught the definition of this word. But as I grew up, gained wisdom and knowledge and experience, I had to learn what compassion is, right? And the textbook definition of it is having a feeling of wanting to help those that you have seen suffer, and then you want to relieve them of that suffering, right? So that's where compassion comes from, which ties deeply into empathy. Yeah. So now that we know what compassion is, let's talk about the value of communicating with compassion. And as always throughout this series, I'm going to be referring to some of my favorite animes. And this one is a legendary anime who just recently ended and started its revamp with a new character, Pokemon. And we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about the bond between Ash and Pikachu and how they demonstrate the value of communicating with compassion. Right? So we need to communicate with compassion so that we can start to build trust, right? That mutual trust with one another. If we don't have a compassion, right? If we don't have a feeling to relieve someone of their suffering, it's hard to trust that person because we just speak to them. We won't even speak to them. We'll speak at them, right? We'll demand things from them. We will talk to them selfishly, right? And just speak to them in a way that doesn't give them value or bring importance to their life or make them feel like they're seen. And that's why people push people away. But if we are able to communicate with compassion, right? If we're able to understand, like, we all are struggling, we all are suffering, right? We all had to go through COVID and quarantine. And just because of that, that should trigger us all to be more compassionate because we don't know what you suffered in your life as you were younger or when you were older, but we all have that one struggle that we share together, which would be COVID-19 and going through quarantine. So that alone should just tell you, be more compassionate to people. Many people lost people during that time. Many people lost who they were. Many people discovered who they were. Many people had to move, change lives. Mental health went down the drain, and we're still recovering from that. I don't know how many years ago it's been because COVID years, it was like a blur. I think it's like 2-3 years now. Khalil has been 3 years since. Yeah, it's like 2-3 years now. So we gotta go back to being compassionate and being compassionate and showing what compassion is and communicating with that compassion, right? I'm gonna give y'all another thing to think about before I start referring to Ash and Pikachu, right? Have you ever had someone speak to you rudely, right? Think about that. Or someone who spoke to you in a way that didn't make you feel like they had compassion for you or cared about you, right? I just dealt with this last week at work with my manager. Didn't speak to me with compassion. Pissed me off. You probably pissed off right now thinking about the person that didn't speak to you rudely. Now, have you ever been that person who didn't speak to someone with compassion? Now that we know what it is, are you trying to, do you have a desire or a feeling to relieve someone of their suffering? If you do, then that means you're a compassionate person. That means you have some sort of innate feeling of what compassion is, right? So let's talk about Ash and Pikachu. Now, Ash and Pikachu have been best friends longer than I've been alive. Okay? Just about. Ash and Pikachu.
Pikachu! Thunderbolt! Let's go!
In my opinion, I think Pokemon does a great job of demonstrating the value of communicating with compassion, right? Their Pokemon don't do what they say. They don't fight the way they need. They don't power up the way they should. They don't evolve, right? That's what Pokemon's all about, evolution. They don't evolve without that compassion, right? Whether it's the Pokemon wanting to relieve its partner of its suffering, or it's the partner, the trainer, wanting to relieve the Pokemon of its suffering. Now, if we think back to Ash and Pikachu in the beginning, Pikachu did not care for anything Ash had to say. He did not respect him. He did not trust him. He had no compassion for him. He could care less about what Ash had to say. Ash was this low life, no good young trainer who couldn't get him to do anything. And he always shocked him, right? That was his way of telling him, back up off me. I don't want nothing you got to do. I don't want to do nothing you got to say, right? And Ash would try. He tried in the beginning. He really did. He put effort to try to, oh, that's my Pokemon. I'm excited to be a trainer. Let me care for it. Let me be compassionate for it, right? But he can only get shocked so many times before he let go of that compassion. Now he was like, you're making me suffer. I don't even care anymore. And they would fight and they would argue until that one moment, right? We all remember that moment, that sad moment. I'm not talking about the one in the movie. I'm talking about the one in the show when Pikachu got attacked by them sparrows, right? And he was down. He couldn't do anything. And Ash picked him up and just ran and ran and ran and ran with his Pikachu to make sure he was safe. And Pikachu saw that compassion. He saw that trust, that willingness to do more for him, to relieve him of his suffering, right? So Pikachu got up and he did thunder and shocked all those sparrows, right? So that's an implication, right? That's a demonstration, that's a visualization of the effect that communicating with compassion can have on a relationship, right? It can either strengthen our relationship or it can weaken our relationship based off the level of empathy that we have when we communicate to one another. Yeah, so to have compassion requires empathy. And if you don't have one or the other, you can weaken your relationship with people. So I want you to think about a relationship that you have, and would you say it's strong or would you say it's weak? And if it's weak, are you being compassionate? Are you expressing empathy? Do you care about what they're suffering? Do they care about what you're suffering? Do either of you want to relieve the person of that suffering? Somebody has to. Somebody has to. Right? And if you having a hard time figuring it out, refer back to Ash and Pikachu. Ash and all of his Pokemon, actually. That's the only thing that makes Ash a great trainer. Because he's not really good at battling, but the compassion that he has for his Pokemon, to love them through their struggle, love them through their suffering, and push them to evolve into the next level. So I want you to try to do that as I try to do that, right? As I said, I am struggling with someone in my life, in my work life, right? So I challenge myself, hey, how can I be more compassionate? What are they suffering? Because maybe I'm just getting the tail end, the collateral damage of, as they say, the shit that rolls down the hill. So what can I do to be a superhero, to change that relationship so that I can strengthen it, right? We have to be very, very mindful of what we say, right? When Ash was speaking negatively to Pikachu, Pikachu responded back negatively. When Pikachu was acting negatively to Ash, Ash started to speak negatively. But in that moment that Ash went over or elevated beyond those past experiences of negativity, the back and forth, the fighting, and he sacrificed, right? Because love is sacrifice. Remember that if you watch the last series, talked about love and the act of understanding. So go back there so you can see how it connects to this series if you haven't watched it already. But he sacrificed his own well-being to relieve Pikachu of that suffering that he was facing. And if you don't know, Pikachu is a he. I'll stand on that. Pikachu is a he. And Pikachu recognized that compassion. So Pikachu stood up and evolved and strengthened their bond, right? He didn't evolve physically, but their bond evolved. And Pikachu was able to do that super powerful thunder, right? So continuing with speaking, I almost reached for the marker that doesn't work. My bad. The one that works is in my pocket. Okay. Proverbs 18:21 says that death and life is in the power of the tongue, or is held in the power of the tongue. Something like that. We'll add it at the bottom so it can be correct. But it's held in the power of the tongue, right? And before I was talking about strengthening and weakening relationships. Life strengthens, death weakens. Okay? So be mindful of how you speak to one another. Be mindful of how you speak, not only to one another, but how you speak to yourself. Are you showing yourself compassion, right? Am I trying to help myself through my struggle, to relieve myself through that struggle? And if not, am I reaching out to people around me that are close to me that I love and trust, right? That I have a bond with, that I have a mutual trust with, right? That I feel equity with. Am I asking them, hey, I could use a little compassion? Am I allowing them to show me compassion? Yeah? Okay? So Proverbs 18:21. Power of death and life is held in the power of the tongue. You get what I'm trying to say. All right? So it takes us back to our childhood, right? If you was raised Christian like me, you got this, and then you got the other, what's it called? The other phrase, which is if you ain't got nothing good to say, don't say anything at all, right? Your words can be hurtful. They can be powerful, right? There's another phrase that they say, the sword isn't as mighty as the pen, right? The pen is mightier than the sword. So that's just letting us know the words that we speak, the words that we write, the words that we send, right? Because we don't talk to each other as much as we used to in the past. We're doing everything digitally and texting and writing and emailing and stuff like that. Our words carry tone, they carry emotion, they carry feeling. What feeling, what emotions, what tone are you sending out? Is it compassion? Are you compassionate? So just be mindful of those things as you move forward. Communicating with compassion is a valuable thing during this time. It's a valuable thing. And we don't have leaders who are communicating to us with compassion. In my opinion, I wouldn't even call them our leaders because they don't know how to communicate to us with compassion. They don't understand the value of this proverb, this wisdom, right? They're just speaking to get what they want, speaking from greed. But that's another topic. We're not going to talk about that too much. So, yeah, remember those things, y'all. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming back and listening again, right? Ash and Pikachu, the value of communicating with compassion. So, I hope that you can build a bond with those around you the same way Ash and Pikachu have. Okay? I am Legacy. Peace.